Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Welcome one and all to the Defiant Takes Football Show. I'm Max Dean. You can find me on Twitter at TheMaxDean, and I am here with Kyle Nishida and Brison Owens, like every weekend, to pick the upcoming games. Now, there's only two of them. It's going to be a little bit shorter of a show. We're going to talk about picking against the spread and a couple of props that we find interesting for the game. Kyle, how you doing today?
Doing all right. Just going back and forth in my mind still as we're approaching the time we need to pick these games. I'm literally still going back and forth on what I want to do today.
I feel that, man. I really do. I truly do. And it's tough because it's like there's only two. So it's like, you have a very easy chance to go over, and that never feels good for anybody. Bryson, how you doing, man?
I'm doing really well. We got a fresh snowfall last night here in Colorado. It's my day off. Nothing better than staying inside on a cold day and watching some football.
Yeah, 100%. And this is it. I mean, it's this. Then we got nothing for a week. We're going to have the week off. Back for the Super Bowl. And then our picks are done. So we're going to do one more show after that to recap the season, talk about what our preseason predictions look like after the season actually concludes. And then that's going to be it for the 3 shows a week. We're going to go down to 2 for a little while and ramp back up once the season gets rolling around again. So I want to give a shout out to Noah Ashley, our producer, getting everything set up for us, making this all feasible. How you doing today, man?
Doing well, man. Had a full Sunday here in Germany, a couple hours ahead of you guys, and now I'm here to keep the show running.
You 100% do that, man. There's nothing like waking up for a live stream and having everything just be like ready to go. Like you guys can't relate to that. Somebody out there might be able to. It's a beautiful, beautiful feeling. Defiant Takes football team is awesome. Nick is currently between Washington, D.C. and Atlanta en route to the Alabama by way of Atlanta. So he's going to stop there tonight. I will be leaving early in the morning with the family to drive out there. So very excited for that. That does mean that our show schedule for the championship weekend recap's a little up in the air. So I don't know if Nick and I are going to try and do something not live tonight and drop that in the morning, or we're just going to have to see how it goes. But either way, we're going to try and get something out for y'all, even if it ends up being a day behind. But that will be a shorter show. Today's going to be a shorter show. And I think that we should just jump right into it. All right. So our very first game today is going to be the 49ers versus the Eagles. Niners are 2.5-point underdogs. And the injury report's relatively minimal for all these guys. Obviously, Garoppolo's not playing. Mitchell is questionable. Ambry Thomas is questionable, and the Eagles don't have anybody on their injury report right now. So that that means that these teams are pretty much full health. Everybody's available to play, and these are two of the deepest and most well-rounded rosters in the NFL. So, Kyle, what do you think? Do you think that the 49ers can keep it within 2.5 points? Do you think the Eagles are even deeper and more well-rounded, or what do you think?
This one's really difficult because it's going against most of the trends I'm basically looking at. I'm going to go with the 49ers plus 2.5 here, but I would not blame you guys for going Eagles. And if you thought the Eagles are going to cover this, mainly because you'll get the key number 3, but you just look at this right now. We've never had a rookie quarterback make it to the Super Bowl. So you're running up against that historical trend in the NFL. Like rookie quarterbacks do not perform well even when they get to the spot. Granted, this is one of those rare circumstances where the 49ers are one of the most loaded rosters. I think you could argue they may have the best roster left in the playoffs. I would listen to arguments for the Eagles as well, but in my mind, I think the 49ers are pretty much stacked in every position except quarterback, and unfortunately, they're on their third string quarterback. But that said, I think the 49ers do have a game plan set up for for trying to mitigate what Jalen Hurts does. I understand he came out flying against the against the Giants, but again, kind of the Giants we may have oversold the Giants last week based on their win against the Vikings. I was
Yeah.
I was guilty of that 100%, but I think the fact is I don't know if I can't remember the last time Jalen played against a defense this good. And I know the 49ers are going to give up a lot of yards, at least to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. But at the same time, they did that against Dallas. And what happened against Dallas? They buckled up in the red zone. They created turnovers when they needed to. I know Jalen's not a huge turnover guy, but I could see the 49ers coming away with at least one or two turnovers, be it fumbles or interceptions, in this game to at least get within 2 points in my mind.
Yeah, I'm going to take the 49ers to cover in this game as well. I think I still have the Eagles winning, even though it's a very slim margin. It's you're talking about the Eagles need to win by 1 or 2 points to keep the Niners covering the spread. I think that what the Niners do defensively will impact the Eagles offense more than I think what the Eagles do defensively with the Niners offense, which I think is going to be a huge factor in this game. The Niners have the best run defense left in the playoffs right now. Both teams are going to want to run the out of the ball because both teams have very young, inexperienced quarterbacks in this situation, and they both have very, very dynamic, very versatile run games. I think they're both going to lean on that for their offenses, especially the Niners. And the Niners just happen to have the best run defense left in the playoffs. So I think that's going to really affect what the Eagles want to do all game offensively. And the Eagles' best strength on their defense is their secondary. Now you saw against the Cowboys last week, Brock Purdy finally came back down to earth. That was Brock Purdy's probably his worst game of this stretch for him. This Eagles secondary is better than the Cowboys secondary. I think the Niners know that. I think they're going to try their best to throw the ball as little as possible in order to win this game. I think they're going to really lean on Mitchell and McCaffrey in this one. They're going to get Debo heavily involved in the run game. I wouldn't be surprised if Ayuk has a handful of carries in this game. And I think the Niners' ability to run the football is what's going to keep them in this game. But at the end of the day, because the Niners have there's one really big weakness for this defense, and it is in the corners. Not necessarily a whole secondary, because Hufanga is phenomenal and Jimmy Ward's very, very good. They also have the corner from the Chiefs last year, Travarius Ward. They have him as well, but he's only one corner, and he's probably going to be on A.J. Brown as much as possible. That leaves Devontae Smith with a favorable matchup. That leaves Quez Watkins with a favorable matchup. And I think at the end of the day, late in the game, you're going to see Jalen Hurts make more plays than Brock Purdy does. Outside of the pocket, throwing the football. He's got a ton of weapons. This game is loaded with offensive talent. Both teams have really great running backs, really great wide receivers. Both teams have really, really good tight ends. I think both of them could have really big games tonight. I think it's going to be a really hard-fought, close game the entire way. You're going to see the Niners have the lead late, in my opinion, with the Eagles and Jalen Hurts leading them on a game-winning drive, probably a game-winning field goal to win this game and go to the Super Bowl. But the Niners' defense and their run game, I think, is going to keep them in it as long as they possibly can. And I think that's going to play into them keeping it within the 2.5 points. So I'm going to take the Niners to cover this game.
I think I'm going to take the Eagles on this one because as great as the 49ers offense is, it still requires them to make a number of throws. And this is definitely the best secondary that the 49ers have had to go up against in the playoffs so far. In the wild card week, they went up against the Seahawks, and as great of a rookie season as what's his name, as
Woolen.
Tyreek Woolen had. He still gives up plays from time to time. They were missing Jamal Adams, so that made it so that Brock Purdy didn't have to put everything in super tight windows. It left them some options open. When they went up against the Cowboys, a similar sort of situation. They had one good corner. The rest of the secondary, is varying degrees of impactful. But this is an Eagles secondary where they've got James Bradbury, Darius Slay. Either one of those could have an all-pro argument this year. And then you've got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and then they've got Avonte Maddox back, I believe, as well, who they didn't have last week. So this is just loaded. These guys, the players for the 49ers they can win. They really can. I mean, they have a bunch of guys, but they are not going to be winning and being wide open. And even though Shanahan can scheme that to some degree, sometimes you've got to just win one-on-one and get hit in a tight window. And I just have this feeling that the pass rush is going to end up being a little bit overwhelming for him because he's done well against pass rush before. He's been able to extend plays and make good decisions. And I don't think he's going to turn the ball over like crazy or anything, but I think it's just going to be that much harder to complete passes. And ultimately, I think the Eagles are able to win by 3 points. Now, that might be 3 outright and maybe 4. I think it's going to be a close game, but I think that margin of error is just a little too tight for my liking, knowing that secondary is not something that they've faced in the postseason so far. And Brock Purdy has started a total of like 7 games total. So that means he had a few games at the end of the year. They had to play teams like the Cardinals, I think, and the Raiders, if I'm not mistaken. Some teams where the defenses were a little bit questionable. And that's not to take away from the wins or how he played, but this is the NFC Championship game against the best team in football. So, I think if he's able to keep this within 3 points or even outright win, there's going to be, obviously the storylines are going to be insane. But, there's going to be some real talk about what he has accomplished. And there already is, I know, but it's like a real conversation about standing up in incredibly challenging moments. And there will be, we'll have to talk about the clutch factor. You know what I mean? And we're going to have to talk about that. So, which is a big deal for quarterbacks, especially when you get to the playoffs. So I'm going to take the Eagles to cover, and I'll be nicely surprised if the 49ers can get it done. Initially, my pick right before the Super Bowl, or right before the playoffs started, was the 49ers and Bills. So Bills are already gone. I think the Eagles are going to come away with this one after the way they performed last week. So this is a great game, and I've been looking forward to this for pretty much the entire playoffs because I knew it was coming. But I'm going to take the Eagles, and that means that I'm going to have to pick against you, Kyle, if I want to have a chance to win on this next one. So I'm not sure where your head falls on it, but how about some props for the 49ers and Eagles? What do we think is a good bet?
Well, for me, I kind of missed this, but then I was reading through it in terms of like I missed it because it happened late during the Eagles Giants game. AJ Brown having a bit of a tirade on the sideline when his team's up by over 2 touchdowns. I couldn't believe I didn't see it live because mainly I tuned that game out at that point in time. But I guess he got really upset, which kind of confused me. But naturally, now that he's facing the 49ers, I would look to bet his receiving yards. I did want to take his receptions, but right now it's at 4.5 at minus 165. That's a lot of juice right now. So I'm kind of monitoring that, seeing if it'll bump up to 5.5, and even then I'd sprinkle a little bit on it. Another one involving him, I actually think this is pretty good, especially if with the inner workings of the NFL. Usually if a guy's upset and he's like a top level guy, coach is probably going to manufacture an opportunity or two to get him the ball early in the game. There's a race to 20 receiving yards on DraftKings right now. AJ Brown's at plus 400 right now. And so if you really believe they're going to manufacture opportunities for him very quickly, very early in the game, that might be something worth your while because he could easily get that in a catch. So I would mainly just focus on AJ Brown. I do think George Kittle at 47.5 receiving yards is actually a good one because again, Brock Purdy is looking at him in opportunities to catch the ball. So those would be the two guys I'm mainly focusing on right now.
There are actually a handful of props I liked in this game. I like to look at a couple touchdown scores, one for each team. My favorite on both teams is Devontae Smith and George Kittle. Devontae Smith is at plus 190. I think you're going to see AJ Brown is going to be with Ward the whole game. I think that gives Devontae Smith a pretty favorable matchup at some point in this game, and he's been getting a lot more targets with Jalen Hurts over the last few weeks. So I think there's a good chance Smith could find his way in the end zone, and then Kittle is easily Brock Purdy's favorite target. I think on any big play, he's going to be looking at George Kittle, and he has 7 touchdowns in this 9-game stretch with Brock Purdy. So I think taking George Kittle to scores, especially at plus 165, is a good bet. I also like. We didn't get this last week, but I like Christian McCaffrey's over on rushing yards. It's at 58.5. The Eagles' biggest weakness on their defense is their run game. They're like 16th in the NFL against the rush. And I think they're going to try and get the ball out of Brock Purdy's hands as quickly and as often as possible. And that leads to McCaffrey just getting a lot more carries this week than I think he got last week. A really sneaky one. I don't think a lot of people are looking at Quez Watkins receptions. Is that 1.5 with plus 110 odds? I think he can get that pretty easily. I think all you need is 2 catches out of Quez Watkins, and you've got it. I think you're going to see. Jalen Hurts at least take a couple of shots downfield, and Quez is that like deep threat for him. And then no one else is going to take but me. But I think I'm going to take the under on Bosa sacks. So I'm basically saying he's not going to get a sack in this game. The Eagles' offensive line is the best in the NFL. They've got Lane Johnson back, and with Jalen Hurts' ability to run the football with himself, I think you're going to see a lot of him escaping the pocket before Bosa has a chance to get to him. So it's wild to think that a guy like Bosa doesn't make a huge impact in a game like this, but I think the Eagles are going to do their very best to like neutralize him as much as possible on that defense.
Mm-hmm. So I like Jalen Hurts' first touchdown score at plus 700. I also like Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown score plus 110. I think we're definitely going to be looking at that at some point. I don't know about first. I mean, I like that bet at least. AJ Brown anytime touchdown score is a plus 145 too. So I feel like either one of those is a nice play. I like there on DraftKings. It's on FanDuel featured is Hassan Reddick to record a sack and Philadelphia Eagles to win plus 185. I like that quite a bit. I think that he can record a sack in this game. The 49ers have pretty good tackle play, but Hassan Reddick has one of the best pass rush win rates, and he's converted sacks very effectively this year, and it's been consistent. So I think that would be a nice play as well, especially if you're going to take the Eagles to cover, in which I am. So I'd probably double down on that and look for that. I don't know. I haven't seen any of the over-unders that I really love yet. Nothing that really jumps out at me. I think they're all pretty viable. Yeah, I don't see any of them that I love, but some of those more specific ones, a touchdown, anytime touchdown, first touchdown. Kittle on a first touchdown is plus 1,000. So if you feel like he's getting the ball, and he has been getting the ball with Purdy, first time touchdowns plus 1,000 as well on FanDuel. So I like those. I think I'd rock with some of those. I mean, if you take Jalen Hurts and Kittle as first touchdown scorers, you probably hedge your bets a little bit, because I feel like one of those guys has a very good chance of getting in the end zone first. So those are my props for this game. Anything else on the NFC Championship game before we move along to the AFC?
I think me and Bryson were talking about this before the show. I think both me and him are in the mindset that this is going to be a very, very this is going to be like high teens, low 20s game. Like the line for the total is actually pretty spot on, at least in terms of thinking
Mhm.
this is going to be a fairly low scoring game, despite the Eagles' offensive talent and everything like that. This is going to be one where it's just going to be like both sides are going to be struggling, uh, biting and chewing, and for every single yard, it feels like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that there are going to be punts in this game. It feels like neither of these teams have punted barely at all throughout the playoffs, but there will actually be punting involved, and there will be scoring as well. And I don't think it's going to be one of those games that looks sloppy. It's just going to be like, these teams will have to be patient. They really will. The first team that blinks, the first team that tries to force something, is probably the team that's going to end up losing, because they're both so good that a turnover margin in either direction is probably, going to be, and it often is in the NFL, but like sometimes you can lose a turnover margin, but still you're just a better overall team. These teams are too close. I think whichever team ends up losing that is probably going to be cost the game.
And then one last thing I'll add on that, you did mention something about which team will like try to force the issue. My money would be on the Eagles trying to force the issues early, because because Sirianni is that type of coach.
Mhm.
And if one thing's starting to become a little bit more clear as we're progressing in the playoffs, Shanahan's actually gotten a little bit more conservative with his decision making. A lot more field goal attempts in like plus territory, and then also a lot of punting at midfield with when say the analytics with your team suggest you're more likely to get this first down on fourth down and that. So that's also an interesting angle to look at if you're following the coaching decision making.
Yeah, I think it makes it easier when your defense is as good as San Francisco's is, because
Right.
the
Yeah.
conservative play call is actually putting your better unit out there, and that's saying something, because the offense is pretty darn good. And sometimes that can be unusual for an offensive head coach who calls plays. They're a little over reliant on their offense to get things done. So they've got quite the team there. There's no doubt about that. All right, let's talk AFC Championship game. We have the Buffalo Bills. We have the Cincinnati Bengals going to the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm trying to keep my preseason prediction alive here. So I believe this game is at, what do we say, 2. I think. Pull this up.
Is this a
Yeah.
3:30?
It's
Yeah.
4:30 Mountain Standard Time.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. We're all in different time zones.
Yeah. I was referring to the spread. So it's a 2-point spread. The
Okay.
Bengals are +2, Chiefs are -2. Chiefs are favored at home. But this is a tight game. It's a really tight game. The Bengals had a heck of a week last week. I mean, they've had a great second half of the season in general, leading into the playoffs and not stopping there. And they've got playmakers. They've got an offensive line that was able to run the ball despite missing some guys. If you look at the injury report, this is probably should pull that up. If you look at the injury report here, just need to edit that. There we go. Okay. The two players who are out for the Bengals are Alex Kappa and Jonah Williams, which are their linemen that they missed last week and didn't seem to actually miss at all, because they were able to run the ball better than they had for a while. Joe Mixon had a nice game. And the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes, but he's injured. He has a high ankle
Mhm.
sprain. He left the field for a drive last week. He was able to come back and still play effectively, although, there was a lot of Mahomes-esque throws where there wasn't a lot of pressure being put on the ankle. So it's hard to fathom that he can do that for an entire game against a team that's playing as well as the Bengals are right now. But he's Patrick Mahomes. He's the MVP of the league this year, most likely. He is a former MVP. He's a former Super Bowl MVP. He's never not made it to the AFC Championship game. So, what is it that he cannot do? And, this might be a legacy, building playoff run if he's able to play through this injury and take home a Lombardi trophy. But what do you think, Kyle? Do you think the Chiefs can win with Mahomes on one leg, or the Bengals are able to cover? And if they cover, they're, within a point, basically. So kind of saying that they're probably going to win.
Yeah, so this is kind of one of those ones where it's all dependent on how you feel about Patrick Mahomes's ankle. And in a lot of people's minds, I know some people would say that they'd probably feel comfortable taking the Bengals even if Mahomes would help me. For me, I think, to be frankly honest, I'm one of those believers that Mahomes' ankle is fine. And I think he may not, even if he's at, I think he's probably somewhere between 80 to 90%, and I think that's more than capable enough of being able to be effective on those off schedule plays where the play breaks down, and he needs to just do enough to scramble around to create enough time for his receivers to get open. I think that ankle is good enough for him to do that. So with that in mind, I will take the Chiefs minus the 2 right now. I took them when they were underdogs actually earlier in this week because I knew you knew the line was going to flip when Mahomes' ankle was likely going to be announced. Hey, he's going to go. So I took them thinking that was going to happen. Sure enough, that did happen. But at -2, I'd still take them. I think the thing about this game that's always interesting with this matchup is it usually comes down to who has the ball last, and in all 3 of the previous meetings, Joe Burrow's had the ball last essentially. The first 2 meetings, obviously the first meeting, the Bengals wasted out the clock and kicked the field goal with no time left essentially. Mahomes kind of choked away the second meeting in the playoffs last year. But again, they definitely had their chances to win that game, and then Burrow had ended the game in overtime. And then even this year, it was 27-24. Mahomes got him into field goal range, and Butker missed the kick, and then Burrow and his offense wasted out the clock. So I think it's just purely these two teams are just really good matchups for one another. This game's just gonna be coming down to the end. It's just who do you think is gonna come away with the end? And as much as I'm impressed by what Burrow's doing this year, I think this is the opportunity for Kansas City to kind of just take back what their control of the AFC and get back to the Super Bowl. So I'd take the Chiefs -2 here.
I'm going to take the Bengals to cover here. I was saying before the show, I trust Joe Burrow on the road in a playoff game more than probably any quarterback in the NFL right now. He looks more comfortable in these type of situations than he does playing on a random mid-afternoon game in the middle of the season. He lives for these type of games. The Bengals are loaded. I think they have just a better roster than the Chiefs do. I'm not even taking the Bengals because of Mahomes' ankle, even though I think it's a little worse than people are letting on. High ankle sprains are nasty. Those things are going to last for a while. And a guy like Mahomes, he's great in the pocket. He can make every throw and read inside the pocket, but he really kills people when he scrambles around. He avoids one sack and he finds Kelsey on a makeshift play playing backyard football. I don't think he's going to be able to do that as much in this game. I think he's going to be really held within the pocket, and that's really going to limit the Chiefs' magic plays that Mahomes can pull off. The Bengals do a really good job of applying pressure with just their front four, but then they're also one of the better blitzing teams in the NFL. Like they bring their corners and safeties on blitzes, and they're really effective. And you saw that last week against the Bills. Like they brought their corners a lot in that game, and it really affected Josh Allen. I can see a similar thing happening in this game. You don't love to blitz Mahomes because you hate to compromise your secondary against him, but I think the Bengals do a really good job of timing their blitzes where it's not always where they expect it and they don't compromise their secondary too much. And you saw, like you mentioned, Max, the Bengals were able to run the football last week. I think they try a very similar thing. If you've watched football a ton, and they said this on the broadcast during the game, offensive linemen love to run the football. And so when you get backup offensive linemen, one of the easiest ways to make them comfortable is running the football a ton because it makes them do what they naturally feel comfortable doing. And you're not asking them to drop back and pass block a ton of times. And so I think they're going to try to do a similar thing in this game. Obviously, the one area of the of a strength that Chiefs defense is against the run. They're better against the run than they are against the pass. That may affect things a little bit, but I can see the Bengals having a very, very similar game plan as they did last week. And at the end of the day, I don't trust this Chiefs defense. I think there's too many good weapons for the Bengals to take advantage of this weak Chiefs secondary. And you saw the Jaguars got not whatever they wanted, but the Jaguars offense was really effective against this Chiefs defense. And this Bengals offense is way more loaded. And they beat up on a much better Bills defense last week. So I have a lot of faith in the Bengals. I think they're the better overall roster. And I think the way Joe Burrow plays on the road in these type of games really puts them over the top for me. So I'm going to take the Bengals to cover here. And I took them to win against Buffalo last week in a close spread like this. I'm going to take them to win this game as well.
Yeah, I'm going to take them as well. Joe Burrow is cold-blooded, and the pass rush for the Bengals right now is healthier than the pass rush for the Bills. I think that's going to make a difference. The ace in the hole for the Bills was Von Miller, and he's unfortunately out for the rest of the year. And the Bengals have Trey Hendrickson, who, maybe he's not Von Miller, probably not going to be a Hall of Fame type player, but he's been very good last year. Really, he's been very, very good the past 3 consecutive years, a very consistent producer at the edge. So with the Saints, then with the Bengals on their Super Bowl run last year, and now again this year, I like Trey Hendrickson in this game. I think he is going to make it hard on Patrick Mahomes. If you want to blitz, you are putting yourself out there for Mahomes to shred you because he does know where to go with the ball. But I think the fact that Trey Hendrickson is probably going to be impactful in this game, even without the blitz, is going to be a big deal for them. They've also got BJ Hill and DJ Reader on the interior. So I think the fact that this may be not the deepest Bengals line, deepest line in the entire NFL, they're healthy and their top 4 guys are all effective. So I like that matchup. Even though the Chiefs have one of the best offensive lines in football, they were able to kind of exert their will last week against the Bills. Or against the who did they play last week? I'm dead tired right now. The Chiefs were able to exert their will in the run game, particularly when Patrick Mahomes was out, and that was a big deal for them. I don't know if it's going to be the same this week. I think that as good as of an offensive line they are, they're going to struggle a little bit more to just dominate that way. So I'm going to take the Bengals to win this game. I would take the Chiefs if Patrick Mahomes' ankle was healthy. Then I'm that much of a believer in him. But like Brison, like you said, high ankle sprains are pretty brutal. And he was in an incredible amount of pain. They took him into the locker room. They taped him up. They 100% shot him up with, something. I don't remember what all the painkillers that they use are, but he for sure was, he was shot up with someone, and he will be again, 100%. But it's the entire game. That stuff tends to wear off a little bit over time. And I'm gonna take the Bengals. Yeah. So Kyle, this is my chance to come back and tie you. Um, and look, I think Joe Burrow also. It's like people are like, last year people kind of treated the Bengals going to the Super Bowl was like, yeah, they're kind of lucky to be there. They played well down the stretch. They almost won, but it was a nice story. We'll see if the Bengals, they're probably not going to be doing that again. And here they are. And I think Joe Burrow is like Tom Brady, where he takes a loss as like a personal slight, like the universe slighted him, and he has to prove them that they were wrong. So I think that he has been thinking about this game, and then 2 weeks from now, from the moment that they lost that game last year, and he's on a tear, he's on a mission, and I at this point, I kind of like him to go all the way. We got to see how this NFC Championship game plays out, but I think the Bengals are going to win, and of course cover, and then they might be my favorite next week as well, depending on what the spread ends up looking like. But any props that we've got for the AFC Championship game in 2022?
I'm again gonna jump on Kelsey. I know he's got the back, but again, this is, as I said last week, this is his time of the year. This is the time when Mahomes or even Chad Henne hunker down and start throwing to that guy a lot. I am also looking at Kadarius Toney, and this would work especially if you think that Mahomes' ankle isn't all that it should be, or you think it's a little banged up. He's basically like, get it out to him as quickly as possible and run after the catch guy. So right now his receptions are at 3.5. If that's the game plan again, I could see him getting 4 receptions. He had 5 last game. 32.5 may be a little bit too much, even though I know he got 36 last game, but I could see them trying to do those quick screens to get him some opportunities in space. So I could see over 3.5. P Ryan at 17.5 rushing yards also at minus 130. I would take that just because that's a pretty low number. And I'm seeing Jerick McKinnon's rushing yards again. I was so sad because last week he got to 25 and I had 24.5. And so I was like, oh, that's just brutal. And it was on the last rush. So I would probably take him under on 27.5 again, or under on him again. 27.5. I'd probably take him on the under.
I like Kelsey to score minus 120. If I would be confident enough in taking him to be the first touchdown scorer. I have to double check to see what those
Plus
odds are.
100
But first touchdown scorer
for Travis Kelce, you said?
Yeah, interesting. On DraftKings, first touchdown score is plus 650.
Okay.
So
that's anytime. Excuse me.
Okay, yeah. So I would be confident enough in taking Kelsey to score, be the first touchdown scorer. I'm going to take every Jamar Chase prop in this game. He murders the Chiefs. He averages 135 receiving yards a game. Now, a lot of that's from that first game where he had 200 receiving yards in it, but he had like 90 something the last game they played. He has also scored 4 times against them. I would take him to score. I would take his over on 83.5 yards. I think that's a pretty easy one. I would take his over on receptions at 6.5, and I would take his longest reception, which is at like 25.5. I would take all the overs on those. I think he's going to have a massive game. Joe Burrow looks at him on every big down. He's his favorite receiver. I think he, with a weak Chiefs secondary, I think Jamar Chase could have a big game. And then one I hit last week, and I think sports books are catching on to this one. I was able to sneak it in too many times, I think. But I'm going to take Joe Burrow to not throw an interception again. Last week it was at plus money. Now it's at minus 130. I would throw it in a parlay of some kind. I don't think Joe Burrow turns the ball over in these games. He only has 2 interceptions in 6 career playoff games, and I think he's not going to do the same thing here. So I like that one a lot. And then one a lot of people probably haven't looked at, Trenton Irwin at 7.5 receiving yards. He's a sneaky, like, good option for Joe Burrow. He's hit that mark in 4 of his last 5 games, and all he needs is like one catch. He just needs one catch, and he's probably going to hit that 7.5 yards. So I would take that in this game as well.
Yeah, not bad. I like Joe Burrow to go over 277.5 passing. I think that's going to happen. Even if they can run the ball relatively effectively, at some point they're going to have to throw the ball a lot. Just because even with an injury, Patrick Mahomes is still going to fling the ball all over the place. Like, Mahomes is still going to get a lot of yards. I don't think I want to put money on a specific yardage total because 283.5 is probably a little too close for me to like really want to pick either way. But he's still going to put up points, and he's still going to move the ball. And so at some point, Joe Burrow is going to have to throw the ball, even if they are able to run it relatively effectively. And so I'm taking his over there. Where were the anytime touchdowns? Because I think you mentioned Kelsey, and I like that as well. Oops.
While you're looking for that, since we basically hit all 3 of the guys, DraftKings is running that Travis Kelsey, Jamar Chase, each get 50+ receiving yards, and Joe Burrow plus 200 yards. You can get that boosted to plus 100. So,
that's
we've
easy.
all. Yeah, I was like, every one of us has touched on those 3 guys collectively. So I think I would think we can all agree. Go ahead and bet on that plus 100 boost.
And when you look at like that's basically like a parlay of players. Right. You look at something like that, you look at that and go, ask who's the one that's gonna mess that up with those type of numbers. I don't think there's anyone that can mess that up. Right. Like, those are too low for any of them to not hit.
Yeah, and so if anytime touchdown, Jamar Chase, Travis Kelsey, I take Jamar Chase at minus 105. I don't care. He's going to get the ball, and he's going to get in the end zone. And there's others as well. T. Higgins, I would probably, where are we at with T. Higgins as an anytime touchdown? Plus 175. Yeah, I'm taking that too. All right, so Bengals are going to score points.
T. Higgins a lot.
Bengals going to score points. Chiefs are going to score points. It's going to be high-flying game. I, just for the sake of watching it, I do wish Mahomes was healthy. But it is what it is. There's still going to be great quarterbacks either way. Guys, it's been fun.
Yes, sir.
We are upon championship weekend. We've made it through an entire season of doing this almost every single week. And again, just a couple of weeks left. All right. Kyle, why don't you let everybody know where they can find your work?
Yeah, you can find me on Gridiron Heroics on Defiant Takes Football, and then on Twitter at Kyle_Nishida.
All righty, and Brison, how about you, man?
You can find me on Twitter at Brison Owens 16. That's Brison. And you can see me both on Defiant Takes Football, Gridiron Heroics, and on DenverSportsBetting.com.
Cool. You can find me on Twitter at TheMaxDean. You can find Defiant Takes Football on all social media platforms. That's going to be at Defiant Takes. Shout out to our producer, Noah Ashley, at NoAshTraySports on Twitter. The site is just about ready, so I'm extremely excited about that. About to go to the Senior Bowl. Extremely excited about that. So big things in the next week. And then Super Bowl's around the corner, and then we get to dive into draft content, which is also one of my favorite times of the year. All right. That's going to do it for us today. So let's go ahead and see you on possibly Monday.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.